There was a new Data for Progress poll in the race for California's 11th district. Am I right? That's the district. If you could just clarify it. This is Nancy Pelosi's old district. Thank you, Brian. Yes, confirmed to be California's 11th district. There was a Data for Progress poll just a few days ago, and I was reading a little bit about it. Apparently, non-English speakers are not in the poll, which there's a heavily kind of Chinese population in this district. So take this with a grain of salt. It's not necessarily going to reflect their voting patterns as well. I'm not familiar enough with the district to make an assessment about where that might break, but it's good news for the candidate in the race that opposes genocide, wants to sanction Israel, Shoykat Chakrabarti. In January, Scott Wiener, who was the more establishment Democratic pick in this race, was at 37%, and Shoykat was at 16%. But now it's 33 to 28, with Chakrabarti at the 28 mark, meaning he has closed that gap within a matter of a few months very quickly, in no part due to the fact that he says things like, we should sanction Israel, we should cut off all arms. And he has, in the past, worked for one of the most popular Democrats in the country, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. One of my favorite moments in my career was going down to D.C., hearing about this kind of thing, knowing it was a bit of a secret operation between AOC and Sunrise, and it was right after she got elected. The Sunrise Movement and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez occupied Nancy Pelosi's office to try to pressure her on the Green New Deal. And Chakrabarti was instrumental in organizing that. I like that he's aggressive. I think he's the kind of Democrat that could really make a difference. And so he's the clear choice in this race, especially because Scott Wiener, or is it Weiner? I'm not exactly sure. But he has had to distance himself from his past support of Israel quite a bit. You can't trust him on this issue for that very reason. And he's being coy about AIPAC money that he's receiving. Let's play 20 and then we'll play 19. Wiener has received tens of thousands of dollars from AIPAC donors, not and even more so from pro-Israel PACs. Now, it won't be AIPAC specifically. The number here that he's going to reference is $47,000, but this is how they're trying to get around the AIPAC thing, because it's become so toxic in Democratic primaries. They're doing it creatively, and we just have to pay attention to that. So here's Scott Wiener responding to a question about the donations he's received.
Would you stop funding Israel completely? Would you take money from AIPAC?
We're not at that stage.
I'll just I'll have you answer. I'm just very clear on not accepting any support from AIPAC.
You've taken 50K, I believe.
Excuse me?
I believe you've taken 50K based on TrackAIPAC.com.
No, that's not true.
From yes.
Yeah, and there are people who are
TrackAIPAC.com, you can find
there are people who are gonna list out all of my Jewish donors and say that. I'm not taking any support from AIPAC, and I support the bombs.
So there he says, quote, there are people who are going to list out all my Jewish donors and say that.
Well, specifically the ones that also donate to AIPAC.
There was a poll, just to dispel this whole Judaism equals Zionism thing that he is furthering by making that claim, when no, it's about people who are in AIPAC leadership, people with association with pro-Israel PACs. J Street did a poll where they found that 40% of American Jews, including 66% of younger Jewish Democrats, say that an AIPAC endorsement makes them less likely to support that candidate, and 66% overall, an overwhelming majority of American Jews oppose AIPAC spending in Democratic primaries. So stop hiding behind this and putting other Jewish people in front of you as a shield to hide the fact that you are corrupted by this money, because this is a guy that does not say that Israel is an apartheid state. He does not. He's not in favor of an arms embargo, and he, in the past, was a part of the campaign to punish this president of a college, and I'm forgetting exactly which, or university in California, that had decided to go into an agreement with the students that wanted to divest from Israel. It was a smaller school. And I know I'm correct about this, but I don't remember exactly the school's name, if you want to look that up. But he was a part of the pressure campaign in his role in California to get this guy to step down. Do we have that?
He stepped down from something, so
I'm almost positive about this. Okay, maybe I am not. We'll see if the IMs confirm that. But Sonoma State. Yeah, there we go. There we go.
He condemned, apparently inside higher ed here, Sonoma State president on leave.
Yep, Mike Lee. There he goes. Because he had an agreement with Students for Justice in Palestine. All right. I got a little nervous there that I hadn't gotten that correctly, but correct.
Regardless of polling, as Sarah Longwell of The Bulwark says, right is right and wrong is wrong. And I don't care what the polling is. A lot of white Catholics think that you should support Donald Trump. They're fucking wrong. I say that as somebody who comes from those people. And it shouldn't feel like, a brave... it's just standing on business. Where do you actually stand? Or are you just beholden to, interests that are driving a wedge, not only in the Democratic Party, but in Jewish people themselves, particularly along generational lines?
It's funny that you say stand, because does it matter to you, Matt, despite everything that I just mentioned, that Scott Wiener can stand in a way that others can't? And I mean that literally. Here's his latest campaign ad.
Here, deep in our fog-covered habitat, we find the rarest of leaders who sticks his neck out fighting for San Franciscans with everything he's got. Scott Wiener, long known as the Giraffe, is one of the most effective legislators, passing over 100 laws to build tens of thousands of homes, protect our health care, and ban ICE agents from wearing masks. Scott is ready on day one to stand tall in Congress for us.
I'm Scott Wiener, and I approve this message.
Fucking loser.
Stand tall.
What is happening?
I've been attacked on the substance of my positions, but have you seen how tall I am?
We're going to open on a jungle
with
a giraffe, and then the fog is going to reveal you.
Also known as the Giraffe. I like how they put that in there. There's no play on his name whatsoever. It's just like, we're going to make this happen. We are going to try to associate him with a giraffe and just see if that works out.
Remember, if you feed Scott Wiener, feed him with a flat hand so he doesn't bite your fingers.
What if we ran a campaign that was geared towards the most shallow girl on Hinge's profile as a way to obscure the fact that we still support this genocidal colonial state and tried to retaliate against a college president for daring to listen to the students in his student body, for daring to want to divest from Israel?
This is what Scott, was it Wiener? He just said it, but I can't remember. But what he was saying in January of this year, 2025, I think it was. I'll double check this, but yeah, here's some of this sticking his neck out in a way that I think a little bit less than courageous. And but let's judge him by his own terms. This is after there was a debate where he was asked about calling it a genocide, and he couldn't do it.
For those of you who saw the debate clip from last week, I want to clarify that I do believe Israel has committed genocide in Gaza, and I want to explain why I hesitated at the debate. For the past 2 years, I have harshly opposed Israel's escalations in Gaza, and I've used phrases like total destruction and catastrophic levels of death and moral stain. But I haven't used the word genocide, and I want to explain why. As a Jew, I am deeply aware that the word genocide was created in the wake of the Holocaust, which was the industrial extermination of 6 million Jews. For many Jews, associating the word genocide with the Jewish state of Israel is deeply painful and frankly traumatic. But despite that pain and that trauma, we all have eyes. And we see the absolute devastation and catastrophic death toll in Gaza inflicted by the Israeli government. And we all have ears, and we hear the genocidal statements by certain senior members of the Israeli government. And to me, the Israeli government has tried to destroy Gaza and to push Palestinians out, and that qualifies as genocide.
Yeah, just like all the protesters were saying who you tried to suppress. The guy who coined the term genocide, Raphael Lemkin, didn't just mean it just exclusively to reference the Shoah, Holocaust of Jews and the Holocaust. And this whole thing of, it's so difficult for me because of my upbringing to use terms like this. Well, you failed. That's a failure on your part. That's a failure for all the people you talk to who also stop short, as you say it, to call what it is. And it's too late. And no one trusts you on any of this stuff. And if you can't say, like, I won't accept donations from people who also donated to AIPAC, AIPAC is a right-wing ethno-nationalist organization. It'd be like saying, a Democrat saying, well, it's tough. We have Afrikaners who really support a white South Africa. What are you going to do? Be racist against white South Africans? If they are putting their money towards a political project that is incompatible with what the Democrats should be standing for, particularly not just based on, what's right, which is how I would do it, but like what the future of the party depends in terms of like political survival, then you don't belong in the party, and go deal with your feelings and how hard it is for you somewhere else. Because we need people for whom this isn't hard, who it's not a huge obstacle. We need people ready to, and guess what? There's plenty of Jews ready to do that too. We see them all over the place. In terms of recently occupying members of the New York congressional delegation's offices trying to get them to stop this war. There are Jews who this isn't so difficult for.
Yeah.
They should be put forward. Our media needs to stop making apologies for people like Scott who are babies about it.
Yeah, and he didn't come to this position easily. This was from public pressure in a really, really blue district where they're not standing for this kind of thing. I just want to completely tie a bow on my claim about what he was doing with Sonoma State, because the tweet is still up here. This is from 2024, where he says that BDS is a movement whose goal is the destruction of Israel.
A couple of years ago.
It's okay. Yesterday, the president of Sonoma State University aligned the campus with BDS.
Cool.
A movement whose goal is the destruction of Israel, home to 7 million Jews. Several other UC and CSU campuses are doing this more subtly. Sonoma State simply said the quiet part out loud, the mask is off, because the president of this university dared to listen to the students that said we want to divest from this genocidal colonial state.
The same, obstacle that led Scott Wiener to not understand what a word genocide means is the exact same one that explains this terminology here about a movement, the destruction of Israel. What they mean isn't like destruction of all Jews in Israel. It's the destruction of a supremacist state that prioritizes the rights of Jews and puts them in a hierarchy above everyone else, that wants to Judaize the land and de-Arabize it. These are explicit goals that not only Likud, everyone to the right, but even frankly, most of the liberal Zionists. That's why you see 2/3 still want this support for the Iran war, which holds Iran off as they try to conquer more of Lebanon for the Greater Israel Project. We don't have time for this. We don't have time in the Democratic Party to be dealing with people who can't deal with reality because of for whatever reason. And this as a Jew thing, I'm sorry, grow up. There are Jews who are mature on this.
Yeah.
How old are you? You're 6'7". You act like a fucking 13-year-old.
That president of Sonoma State was put on leave, and Wiener participated in that public pressure campaign
it's the same thing with
yeah.
Dan Goldman. We see all these Dan Goldman ads. You can't escape them. Trying to act like he's this big progressive. You were going at your colleagues who were calling this out this genocide from the start. Like, and people aren't going to forget that. We don't have time. And frankly, what's his name? The billionaire in Chicago played the same card with the I've had it ladies, saying, this is really tough for me. Keep that to yourself if it is, because what the world needs from you is to act responsibly and courageously for what is right, not like what's difficult. We don't care about your like personal journey on this. No one else has fucking time for it.
Yeah. All right, guys, going to read some IMs and get out of here. Dr. Jesus says, if you're marketing yourself as the giraffe, you probably should stick to practicing injury law. Sammy Split Seeds. As a Jew, I can say we aren't raised to blindly follow Israel. Scott needs to stop speaking for Jews and make us look bad. We will only cause more anti-Semitism.
This is why you see the freak out by New York Post types about like Molly Crabapple's book and that sort of thing, because that is just what's right. And what's right's day has come.
Yeah. JR in Philly starting a DoorDash grandma chant in the IMs. Ben Shapibo's eyebrows. Did you all see a recent pro-APAC ad leaning into identity politics? It read like a parody, but it is real remarkably. We'll check it out.
It's like it's 2010 all over again.
Zyra, I don't get the disdain for superhero media. Like, okay, I'm kind of over it, but the hate feels bitter and rage baity. Well,
I'll take it that way.
It's definitely not rage baity, but it may be bitter, but we reserve the right to be bitter.
I'm certainly not the first person to comment on how it's a symptom of an infantilization and hero worship. I think probably generally isn't healthy either.
Evan from Portland, it's only genocide if it applies to me, is very Republican framing.
I mean, it's so gross to say like this word was coined and not go into like the guy used it not just explicitly to talk about the Shoah, even though it was in the wake of the Holocaust. Like, I'm sorry, like this genocide does have specific components to it, all of which Israel absolutely, no question has satisfied. They are guilty of genocide.
Josh in California, every time I am reminded of the red button, I lose more of my hair. NC Socialist. Fun fact, the comic The Boys was loosely based on is from Garth Ennis, who was outed for being a sex pest a few years ago. The comic is even worse than the show. 3 more. BF from PA. I tried watching Homeland recently and couldn't even get past the first episode. The Islamophobia in it is ridiculous. I mean, that whole time was, 24 rotted the minds of so many people and was like legitimately 9/11 propaganda to justify our wars in the Middle East.
It's crazy. I think from like 1990 to like 2010, there was some study. I don't think I've tried to find this subsequently, but some guy did some canvas of all the different representations of Muslims in media, and something like 90% of them were like hijacking terrorists.
Yeah. Even the ones that were sympathetically portrayed, like Saeed in Lost, was a Iraqi. First of all, he's not. I don't think he comes from Iraqi descent. He may not even be Middle Eastern, if I'm remembering correctly. But he was a Iraqi torturer. I think that was. It was so unnecessary. And that guy was like a good actor and character and gave him humanity, but it could have been just every single thing. Why would an Iraqi torturer be on this flight? It makes no sense.
It's the same way we have propaganda about how dangerous cities are and how you're just going to be beat up by black teenagers if you come to an urban center.
Yeah.
It's a fear-based project for reactionary purposes.
I pray to Pesci says, you know what isn't bitter? My MR Just Coffee blend.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.